It's bye week and the boys are on their week off, so there's no better time to unpack the season so far. Today we're going to run through a quick fire of all 14 games, the highs and the lows, and even give each game a grade as well before we run through the MVP standings, who's having a good year, and where the growth is coming from, some of the KPI metrics to see just how much the Eagles have improved in season 2026. Great to have your company on the Golden Wings podcast this week. I'm joined by two up-and-coming media superstars. On my left, as always, we've got Rhino in the house. Rhino, mate, how are you?
Good, mate. Good to be back this week. Obviously, the bye this week, and good to have our brand new guest in, Noah from FM.
Unreal. Bit of a round of applause for Noah.
Noah.
I applauded myself.
Yeah, no, we love that. It's good to have Noah in this week. He's been good enough to have me on his show on SportFM a few times throughout the year, so it's good to repay the favour. Noah, mate, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I love the setup in here. It's very very fancy. I love the way it looks. So
yeah, we are very lucky, looked after here as always. It's good to have you on, mate. You are a big West Coast man?
Yes, I am. Always have been since I was a little kid.
Unreal. So we've got the expertise in the house, and his show's amazing on SportFM. I listen most weeks and have been lucky enough to feature as well. So where can we find you, mate, on SportFM?
Yeah, so I'm on SportFM. Obviously, I do some producing there, but I also get to host the 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock hour on Mondays. So that's a lot of fun getting to do that. I've had you on that show, and I love doing that. And I also host a little half an hour as well on Thursday between about 1:30 and 2. So that's really fun as well. So
Beautiful.
yeah, I love doing it.
Yeah, you can hear that crisp sounding voice over the mic there.
He's radio ready, this guy.
Looking forward to hearing some of his takes on the season so far. As I said before, we are just going to quick fire through these games. So I've actually got a 1-minute timer, which I'm going to set up, and we've all been assigned our games. So we'll get through the highlights and the learnings as quickly as possible. Give each game a grade at the end. So Rhino, why don't you kick us off with round one?
Round one against Gold Coast went down by 59 points, and Eagles actually won the second half in this game, which we were really happy with. Milan Murdoch's debut game, the Sparky showed himself out in that game as well, which was great to see. And yeah, obviously we're down at quarter time by 38 points. It was horrible to see, but it was great to see the boys come back in that game. And obviously the first half was terrible, but the boys did take a lot of learning lessons, which was great. Coming into the North Melbourne game, which obviously was a pretty good game. We'll get to that in a minute. And we had a grade in this game as well. We're doing grades for each game this season, and I gave this match a C- because it was pretty bad first half. You'd probably say that first half was an F. But we won that second half against a Gold Coast side who, at the time, were really considered as premiership favourites, up with Sydney and Fremantle and Geelong type. So we'll definitely take that. And it's just great to see that the boys showed up in the next game, which you're on, Noah. So tell us about round two in North Melbourne.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be at this game, and it was a lot of fun. The Eagles got their first win of the year. And it was actually the first win since round 10 of last year. Obviously, the only win that we had last year. But it was just great to get a win so early in the season, given how rare they have been over the past few years. It was great to see Willem Dersma, only his second game as well, when he lit it up. Him and Harley Reid, they combined for 45 disposals and 2 goals.
Massive.
Yeah, it was awesome, wasn't it? And the three young tools, they kicked 2 goals each. And of course, Milan Murdoch kicked the sealer. And great to see Milan Murdoch as well.
How good is he?
Make an impact so early in his career, given how good he's been in the waffle for so long. So I was really happy for him. And it was just a huge confidence builder for the team fighting back from a 30-point deficit. Looked pretty bad early, didn't it? But they bounced back and they won that game by 17 points. And I think this game, if you're giving it a grade, you have to give it an A, don't you? It was an amazing win. And round 3 against Port.
Absolutely. And what a way to follow on. I think another pretty flattening first quarter, to be honest. And this was a bit of a trend that we saw, obviously, from Gold Coast. They were able to come back and win the second half. And same against North Melbourne. And this week, in round 3 against Port, they managed to come back from a 9:30 start, which was probably all the talk at the start of the week. They had to play very early in the Western time. And how can we talk about this game without mentioning Joe Shanahan's game-saving mark? But there were so many positives to come from. Obviously, it was our second win for the year by round 3. Jake Waterman had kicked 4 goals that day, including a massive one from outside forward 50.
That was huge.
The Eagles were plus 15 in clearances against a pretty good midfield, which was definitely something that I wanted to highlight. The bad for the week probably obviously was being down 29 points up against it again with a first quarter lapse, but another A. for the Eagles and starting the season off strong. That massive comeback 2 in a row. The Eagles were in the top 8 at this stage and we're really building some serious belief.
And that brings us on to round 4 versus Sydney, which that was an absolutely diabolical game. I feel like we should just cut this out. This was horrible. Let's move on to the next game. I mean, we did go down by 128-point loss, so you can't really say much positives from that. But Willem did kick a nice goal from outside 50, which I did want to highlight. And he was probably our best on during that game in a horrible game. And it was horrible to see because we had those 2 really good wins and we were really positive going into that game. And it was just unfortunate to see the scoreboard end up as it is. But Sydney are a top side against. It was obviously a good learning lesson for the boys, and yeah, hopefully they moved on to the next week and they took a lot of learning lessons out of it. And I think they know the benchmark going into their premiership era when the Eagles can be good. This is the benchmark to be able to win premierships. So shocking game, and if we were going to give it a grade, it's an E.
Yeah.
Like if you lose by 120 points, like you can't give it anything else. And yeah, to sum it up, really, it was a lot of learning, but it was a lot of losing. That was it was a big loss. So yeah,
sometimes you need these games, don't you, need to learn a little bit.
That's right. And
sure.
Moving on to Gabba round 5 Geelong, mate.
Saw this jersey out on the park.
Beautiful ochre.
Beautiful ochre.
Yes.
What did you think about it?
I loved the jumper. Loved the whole aesthetic of the game at kind of the suburban ground as well, along with that
cool
jumper. And I really enjoyed it. I do love Gather Round. It's one of my favorite. I always wanted to go. So I love the aesthetic of it. The actual game itself, look, it was a 46-point loss. So in the end, it was pretty disappointing. But we were playing the grand finalists from last year. The headline would probably be the long-awaited comeback of the ochre jumper, like I said. Jobe Shanahan, he kicked 4 goals in this one, so he was huge. And Tom McCarthy had 28 disposals as well. So I love the way that those two played in this game. The bad was probably that 5-goal burst from the Cats late in the second quarter. That probably, in the end, was a difference, or at least it would have been a lot closer if it wasn't for that stretch, and it undid a lot of the good work of the Eagles as well. And Devon Robertson, he suffered a season-ending knee injury in this game, so that was obviously incredibly unfortunate. I gave this grade a B-. I
like it.
Yeah, I was kind of tossing up between a C and a B-, because it felt a bit generous to say B for a 46-point loss, but I decided to judge the entirety of the game rather than the margin, and I think they showed a lot of promise at points of this game, but the Cats were just too good in the end.
No, I really like it, and I think at this point of the season, we're feeling really good about ourselves for sure. Banked a couple of early wins and playing well against some good sides. Obviously, the Sydney game is a big blip. That sort of continued in round 6 in the Derby. It was a 56-point loss, 41-97, but the Eagles avoided conceding their third 100-point plus score this year in consecutive games. So it was a solid game. They managed to keep the scoring down a little. They hit the lead in the second quarter, which was probably the big positive. They broke even in the contest work as well against a premier midfield. I think they might have almost won centre bounce clearance. And they weren't too far off in tackles and contested possessions either. Jake Waterman kicked 1 goal 4, which was a bit flattening, and it's sort of not just the misses, but in the times as well. Sort of similar to when Geelong were able to break away in that third, as you mentioned, and kick 5 goals on the burst. A lot of Jake's misses came in crucial moments where the game was sort of in the balance. I think this is probably where those yips really started to come in, and unfortunately there was a little bit of a snowballing effect. But if I had to give it a grade, I'd give it a C. I think that we could have been far more embarrassed in a derby. And the Eagles copped the inevitable 10-goal derby loss, but not without showing plenty of promise in that first half.
And now round 7, mate, you've given me another 100-point loss. I'm pretty flat.
I'll stitch you up. Sorry, mate.
No, you're all good. We went in order. So, 101-point loss to St Kilda, obviously. That was a horrible blip game. I think, obviously, the first quarter and second quarter weren't too bad, but then St Kilda went on an absolute burst, scoring heaps of points. And I just loved what Mini did in this game, actually. I loved the matchup that we saw was Willem and Naz. That was really interesting to see. You're starting to see the future of Willem Dersma. He had 22 centre bounce appearances, and that was probably his first game where he had a lot of midfield minutes. And he ended up with 25 touches and 600 metres gained. So that's the future of the Eagles, and Willem Dersma really shined in this game. And I feel if I was to give it a grade, I think it's more like a D-. It's not quite an E, because I feel like we're sort of competitive in the first quarter and second quarter, but you can't really get much positives out of a 100-point loss. So it was pretty diabolical, if I'm being honest. And yeah, we were thinking maybe going into next week with Richmond, we could have had a better result. But Noah, do you want to tell us how that went, mate?
Didn't go to plan.
That's for sure.
Yeah, not enough. The 2006 players, they were all there. The flag reunion was on, but it was not enough to inspire the Eagles to a win in this one. The very shorthanded Tigers, they got the win. Tim Kelly, he had 30 disposals and a goal, so that's a positive for the Eagles. Harley Reid, 26 and 2. And then Harley Reid and Willem Dersberg, they both kicked incredible goals on the run. Harley Reid's was, I think, at the start of the second quarter.
That was really nice.
And then
in a bounce.
Yeah, it was. That was in a great goal. And Willem Dersberg as well at the end of the game on his left. When the game was, still up for grabs, so a little pressure on that kick. And that was a great goal. The negatives from this game. So at halftime, 19 consecutive losing quarters. So after that kind of 2 wins in a row early in the year, that was a pretty disappointing result to lose 19 quarters in a row. And then conceding 3 of the last 4 goals cost the game. We've actually been finishing games okay this year, but this game we weren't able to close it out. I gave this one a D. It probably could have been a bit lower, to be honest, just given how short-handed the Tigers were. So despite coming in as favourites, the Eagles, they suffered a very disappointing loss on what was a pretty big day for the Eagles.
No, it's really interesting, and we touched on before how good we were feeling about ourselves probably at the earliest part of the year, and then coming off that Richmond game, I think it really did hit us. A little bit of a reality check, and I've heard a lot of players mention in the media, we heard Will Schofield go with it as well this week, that there were some tough conversations had around this time of the season with, I know Harley Reid was challenged with his defensive running, and that's definitely something that we've seen improve this year and hasn't lifted the side. And a lot of players were challenged on their efforts and the way they were going about it. And we saw a little bit of a response after this Melbourne game, but particularly in the weeks following. But round 9 versus Melbourne, a 32-point loss. Could have been a lot worse. Melbourne scored just 99 points. They've been pretty good for kicking over 100 with their free-flowing footy. We scored 67. The Eagles... Knew you were going to hit that right. The Eagles avoided another blowout, which I think was the headline of the game. They led the scoring after the 3-quarter mark of the second quarter. So when you factor all that in, it is a pretty solid performance. But being out of the game by halfway through the second quarter is not ideal. Hit the lead early, which was good, and steadied before the game got away. The lack of pressure and direction, though, did mean that the game was done at halftime. And Harry Edwards' injury was probably the biggest blow to come out of this game. I gave it a D. And I think that the last half resurgence really would go on to be the start of an inspired run of form, which we're going to touch on leading into the bye.
Well, thanks, mate. And this leads to probably one of my favourite games. And thank you for not giving me all the losses, mate. You've given me a nice one. You've thrown me a bone. You've given me the GWS game in round 10, obviously resulting in a 17-point win. Big upset. I think everybody thought that GWS was going to bring that orange tsunami over West. And it was great to see the emergence of Big Baz. He was huge in this game. And Harley was unbelievable. That was a huge performance from him. Got 30 touches, was unbelievable all around the ground. And yeah, it was really good to see that the boys had this fight in them. And I feel like the last quarters that we had started to build over the last few weeks really hit the ground running in this game. And we were huge in that last quarter, getting us over the line. And the only real bad was that we kept them in the game at a few stages. I feel like there was moments where it was like ebbs and flows. So we had good passages and then they had good passages when we could have put them away. But other than that, I feel like the contest was unbelievable. I think we really stood up our tagging roles in Hoffey and Milan. Huge in locking down Callaghan and Whitfield and stopped the orange tsunami going forward. And if I was to give this a grade, it's an A. It's A to an A+. It was an unbelievable performance from the lads individually, as a team. And it really outlined the future of the West Coast Eagles going forward. And it's led to a huge game at the MCG.
Yeah.
Scott Pendleby's groundbreaking game, mate. What did you think about it? I thought it was an unbelievable game.
It was. Yeah, it was. It's probably the best loss you could get, to be honest, given of the entire context of what was happening in that game. Obviously, they lost that game by 10 points. They were within a goal with only a few minutes left. Couldn't have done a much better job. They almost spoiled the party.
Yeah.
Over 90,000 there at the MCG to celebrate Scott Pendlebury. And I thought they showed incredible resilience just because the entire game, the crowd, even maybe there were some dodgy decisions as well that went against them, and they just kept fighting back despite being behind for a lot of the game. So they just refused to play a secondary character in this game to the Collingwood party. And I'd say the start of the third quarter probably cost the Eagles the game. I feel like that's been the case in a few games this year.
Yeah.
conceding 4 of the first 5 goals in the third quarter, in the first 10 minutes of that quarter, really hurt. And in the end, probably made the difference in the game. I gave this one an A. This was as good a performance as you'd get, as I said, given the entire context of the game. Scott Penderbury, he deserved the entire celebration that he received in this one. And I was obviously very happy for him because, as a footy fan, he's an icon and a legend. But just given the stage and what was stacked against the Eagles, amazing performance.
For sure.
It absolutely was. And I couldn't help but feel watching it on the TV. It just felt like 2018. Overcast nature, the blue and the black and white. It was unreal. Packed house, obviously. We don't get to play in front of many packed MCGs. So what valuable experience for the young group. Round 12 against Essendon, and the good performances just keep on coming. A 30-point win, and the Eagles were big winners as the 2 number 1 picks put the Bombers to the sword. What a day it was from Harley and Willem combining for 49 disposals and 2 goals between them, which is just massive. Jake Waterman had 3 goals, could have had a much bigger day. Reuben Ginbey with 11 intercepts just cut off anything that was coming his way. He was massive. There was no bad in this game. If you wanted to pick between whether it should be an A+ and an A, I've given it an A+. Could have been an A if you factor in the last half of the fourth quarter where they let them into the game a little bit and sort of let that lead go. But it was just good to see the Eagles finally win a game that they were supposed to win. There's not many of those, and they did so in dominant fashion for most of the day. So it was the most dominant fourth-quarter performance that we've seen all year from the Eagles, and their first A+ for the year.
Love it. And round 13 against Port, obviously a really game that could have been gone either way, and it resulted in us losing by 6 points, unfortunately. But the headline was that Port Adelaide really had a bad scare in that game. That last quarter could have really gone. We could have even blown them out by 20 points. We were that dominant in that last quarter. We were all over them. And it was good to see young players stepping up in the big moments in the last quarter. I think Bo Allen was huge with a few intercept marks, and we were just really inaccurate. We ended up with 2 goals, 6 in the last quarter to their 1 goal, 2. So we really could have won that game pretty easily. And unfortunately, with those first 3 quarters, we probably didn't deserve to win the game. So, it was great to see that we have the fight in us. It's just that we got to start to bring, like in the Essendon game, a 4-quarter result in a game. And I graded this game a C- because I feel like we probably could have won in the end, but I don't think we deserved to win in the end because of those first 3 quarters. And obviously it was a close loss, but it's great signs for the future seeing younger players step up in big moments later in the game. So it's good to see the development. And North Melbourne, we're thinking maybe next week we could have got a dub, but unfortunately it ended up the way it did. So Noah, how do you sum this one up, mate?
Yeah, this game was a bit of a tough one to get a read on, I think, because look, it was a close loss, 1-point loss. Obviously, that's always pretty shattering. Obviously, that late chance hit the post from Jake Waterman. I think some of the positives are the way that we're finishing the games. Like even the Port game, finishing strongly, and some of the other games as well. I just think it bodes well that we're finishing games well, because I actually think there were a few games last year where teams run over the top of us instead. So
it's a great shout.
I like that we're finishing the games well. And I like the way that Shanahan and Waterman played, massive in the air, kicking 3 goals each. The bad was conceding a run of 6 goals. That was from the 18-minute mark of the second quarter to the 6-minute mark of the third quarter. Conceding that run of 6 really made the difference. And 8 goals between Lucky and Darling, 4 each.
God, Darling was incredible in that first half. Like, unstoppable.
That really maybe shows that we can be a little bit vulnerable in our defence if someone like Jack Darling at his point of his career can wind back the clock like that. And it showed how much we might miss Reuben Ginbey as well. So Jake Waterman hitting the post with a chance to win the game late as well really hurt. So I'd say Eagles lose a 1-point heartbreaker, late comeback falls short, and pretty disappointing to lose those 2 winnable games in the last couple of weeks.
No, really well put, boys. That's the game so far. I really like that you mentioned there the ability to run out games. I think that's definitely a progression that we've seen this year. I know that one of our listeners, Aiden, who listens every week, so shout out to you, did mention on YouTube in the comments last week that he wanted us to give some love to Phil Merriman coming across from the Dockers as a high-performance manager. He had us doing Match Sim a lot earlier in the piece this year in the pre-season, probably before even the turn of the new year. And that's held us in really good stead. Obviously, we've had a few hiccups with injury and people being slightly overconditioned. Obviously, Brandon Starcevic has missed a big chunk of the year, but no, it's been great to see the boys running out games, and I definitely think it's been the difference in our season. I'm just going to run through some of the tangible KPIs, I suppose, some of the stats. I think from the touch and feel, we can all say that we're pretty happy with how the season's gone. There's been a little bit of a roller coaster, but to put a bow on the recap, I'll just run through some of the champion data numbers. At the moment, we're sitting 9th in the AFL for time in forward half, which is coming majorly from our centre clearance dominance. We've got a strong defensive layer, which is sort of helping keep the footy in, which is great. That's been one of Mini's trademarks since he got here. Really wanted to make something of that. 15th in the AFL for inside 50, so we're building in that area, but it's still not great. 4th worst in the AFL for disposals per turnover ratio. So the amount of disposals it takes us to produce a turnover. We would have been clear number 1 last year, so I suppose you could say that's growth, but it still is definitely a problem for us, especially considering that we don't get a lot of disposals to begin with. So that is a bit of pain for us. Worst disposal retention in the comp, which speaks to what I've just said there. And meters gained per disposal is quite high. So that probably lends itself to it a little bit. Long to a pack can become a turnover quite easily, even if you don't hit a player on the chest. It's not sexy football, but it's keeping us competitive in games. A lot of people are saying we want to see some more purposeful ball movement, but if we're losing games by 6 points, 1 point, and winning some games, and you can't really argue with the method at the moment. Our contest numbers, ground ball numbers are really healthy, right in the top half of the comp for contested possessions and ground ball gets, which is great. Second last in the AFL for marks inside forward 50, which sort of lends to that as well. Definitely playing predictable footy. I did notice we were 3rd equal for most individual goal scorers, which isn't, it doesn't mean much, but it means that we are not relying on just a couple of players, and a lot of our players are able to find the big sticks, which is great. We've done pretty well in that aspect, but the shots, scores and goals per inside forward 50 have been horrible. We've been amongst the worst sides for that. So it's obviously an area for improvement. But again, once we do tidy that up, we're going to be such a better side. And in the back line, our defensive one-on-one numbers are actually really healthy. Middle of the pack in that space. So it sort of cements the positive narrative that's growing around our defenders. Given the amount of entries that they are conceding, I think that our midfield running 2 ways and helping out each other has been massive. So there's some of the numbers that hopefully you can see are moving in the right direction. It's going to be a slow process, and I genuinely think that the games that we've reviewed so far this week show that it has been a little bit of a roller coaster, but it's all about just watching the young group, and I think there's so much more value in the first 15 minutes of this episode where you find the little wins from each game rather than just looking purely at the numbers after a block of footy. But we'll move on now to the MVPs. We're just going to quick fire through some of our better players this year, give some love and see where our main contributors are coming from. Rhino, do you want to kick us off with number 1?
Well, number 1, I think it's pretty obvious who was our number 1 this year. Big Reuben Ginbey has 59 votes for us, coming in at first. He's averaged 13 disposals at 81%, 8 intercepts, 91% defensively in one-on-one matches, which is huge. That's huge. Again, he's playing probably the best forwards in the comp each week when he was playing. So that's a huge win for us. And averaging 5.5 spoils. The evolution of Ginbey as well is into the marks as well. So he's averaging 4.5 marks with 2 tackles. Probably you can argue he's probably becoming one of the best fullbacks in the comp. And it's just great to see the development slowly of Reuben Ginbey. Obviously, predominantly a spoil type player, where in earlier seasons he wouldn't try to go for the mark, he would spoil. And now he's really becoming that intercepting type with Jeremy McGovern type intercept marker, centre half back or fullback. And his development is going great. And obviously, we forget we drafted this guy as a midfielder. And slowly but surely, he's just transitioned into a backman, and he's been absolutely huge for us defensively. And I don't know how we're going to go without him in the next few weeks, because he's such a huge out. And him and Harry are probably our key defenders down back for the future. And with both of them out, who do we turn to?
Just quickly on that, I think that I saw something during the week. A lot of people were quite shattered when we lost Harry Edwards, Jeremy McGovern, Tom Barras. Do we see the emergence of Reuben Ginbey without those events? We've found our fullback for the next 10 years.
I think we have.
So hopefully throughout the back half of the season, we can see someone like Rhett Bazzo really take that next step. It's sort of an intangible, but hopefully that's something that comes from a negative.
Yeah, I'm loving to see Rhett Bazzo. He's been really good the last few weeks. And I think Kane Corns highlighted in his previous shows that we're starting to develop these type of players. And him and Tyler Young are going to have to step up in the next few weeks. But Reuben Ginbey, like this guy, he's a future leader of the footy club and he's really going incredible. His kicking efficiency as well, we highlighted, which was a huge issue early in seasons. His kicking was pretty bad, but earlier in this season, he's averaging 37%. He's now gone up to like 63%.
In 2026.
2026. That's huge.
Massive.
Like he's slowly starting to get better. And he's the hardest working fella at that club. And you can see it on the pitch. You can see it off the pitch. This guy works incredibly hard. And we just love to see the evolution of Reuben Ginbey. He's only going to get better from now. He's still only a young fella. So, yeah.
Very unfortunate that he's probably not going to be rewarded for his great season with the best and fairest because, as you can see, leading our MVP was headed that way. Someone who's hot on his heels and probably is now Monty to take it out, Noah.
Yeah, mate.
Yeah, so Harley Reid, he's second. Only one vote behind Reuben Ginbey. Averaging 24 disposals, 12 contested possessions, 5 clearances. He's basically just doing everything that we would expect from Harley Reid. He's laying 3 tackles, 2 shots on goal. He's just an absolute star. And he had a great preseason, which he didn't really have, at least from, according to reports, before last season. And we sort of saw early last season he was struggling to get into his work and really find his best form. But in the back half of the season, we started to see those flashes. At the moment, we are seeing the best of him, I think. And we're really starting to see him fulfill that potential. He's covering the ground and he's running defensively as well, which maybe he didn't do. I think a lot of people maybe were a bit critical of him in his first couple of years. But yeah, he's running defensively and he's definitely having a best and fairest worthy year so far. Harley Reid, I think everyone is just loving what they're seeing from him. He's really fulfilling the potential that we all expected when we drafted him.
Absolutely. You can see what a difference it makes for the whole squad when he's running defensively and doing the big acts. It really does lift everyone else. He is that barometer. Averaging 3 coaches' votes a game this year, which is nuts.
That's pretty good.
It's massive. So it's good to see that. I think he'll be right around the Brownlow top 5, top 10 in the first early round. So that'll be good to see. Hopefully he can start polling some more throughout the back end of the season. Jake Waterman sits in third for us, a little bit of a contentious one, 43 votes, but he's just been unreal in pretty much every facet of the game. He's had 13 disposals, averaging 2 goals, 5.4 shots at goal, which is the main one. Unfortunately, obviously only the 2 goals to come from that per week, but he can easily get that up, and I want to talk about that in a minute. 8 score involvements, which is massive, and 7 marks. So he's getting up the ground, he's taking relieving marks, he's bringing teammates into the game, and although it's been a frustrating year, he's still one of the comp's premier key forwards, and he leads the competition for score involvements and shots on goal going into his bye. And he could easily be an All-Australian lock at this stage if he was converting more consistently. Right. And I was thinking before, there's still 10-odd games left in the season. If he can kick, 3 goals a game from there, he's right into All-Australian caliber range. 100%. So could we see a late charge from Jake? Hopefully the week's off been good for him. Hopefully he can just have a mental refresher and come into the back half of the season kicking strongly.
Yep, and obviously that leads into our 4th and 5th, who we obviously love to talk about on this podcast previously. Tim Kelly and Tom McCarthy, these guys have really stepped up this year. I think Tom McCarthy at the start of the year was really touted early on that he was going to be in the midfield mix and he was going to be that other guy with Harley Reid and Elliot Yode and Tim Kelly types. But they put him back in his natural position at halfback and he's really stepped up in getting great amount of touches on the footy, and he's really helping our defensive measures as well. And he's really starting to put together a nice season in his second year. And yeah, obviously that mature age has really helped our back line as well. And really good pickup in the mid-season. And Tim Kelly, we brought this guy over from Geelong, huge promise, huge prospect, and he's really stepped up this year and really starting to get together a really nice season. Going through the middle, he's been an absolute beast for us. He's that guy next to Harley who can give it off to teammates and set off teammates. And yeah, he's got our 4th in our MVPs and Tom McCarthy's got our 5th. So really happy to see these guys back in form, especially Tim Kelly. Kurt, you wanted to mention off these other guys, obviously 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. These guys have been huge for us as well. And yeah, what did you think about
really
these
nice
guys,
top
mate?
5 building there. It's good to see a bit of youth rounding out the top 10. Some very exciting names with Willem Dersmer at 6 in his debut year, having a stellar debut season, should be leading the Rising Star. Probably
100%.
is in jeopardy having missed a couple of games with injury. Well, he's only missed the one, but we see how he goes pulling up from that calf. Milan Murdoch in at 7. What a story. What a signing it is. Stoked to see him extend through to 2028. There is a little bit of a timeline on his journey on Instagram if you want to go back a few tiles and have a look at that. Job Shanahan at 8 just keeps on getting better. It's good to see him in the top 10 of our MVP. It's hard as a key position forward, especially to find votes in a struggling side. But he's been going behind the ball and getting it done and taking big marks, kicking big goals. And geez, what a talent. I heard David King say that he'd be top 3 in a redraft, which is a pretty stacked draft.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So that's good to see. Bailey Williams at 9's been a bit of a revelation since the new ruck rules came in, which is great to see. And Elliot Yeo rounding out the top 10. Isn't it just nice to have him back on the park?
Oh, huge.
We forget that this guy didn't play at all last year, and he hasn't been hitting the highs that we probably know he could be, but he's still been so important to what we've been able to do. So big for this young group. So
He's doing his bit, hey?
absolutely.
He's huge for our clearance as well. And we talked about earlier, our centre clearances have been up there in the comp. So he definitely helps out the Harleys and the Kelly types.
100%. Not getting the respect that he deserves for his season, I don't think, but we're happy to see him just flying under the radar and not in the headlines for the wrong reasons with injury and that sort of stuff. So that was our mid-season recap. I think we'd all agree that we're in a pretty good spot without getting too carried away with where we're at. But a massive thank you to Ryan and Noah for joining us today. We're going to jump in and record a little trade period update as well, which is going to drop later on in the week. So keep an eye out for that in your feed. That'll be on all the major platforms. So looking forward to it. We'll chat soon.
Chat soon, guys.
See you later.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Golden Wings podcast. Please take a moment to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow along on our Spotify and Apple podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating. And if you want to keep up with all the information throughout the week, follow us on Instagram at Golden Wings Podcast. Don't miss anything. Kurt does a great job. And most importantly, if you've got a friend or family member who loves the West Coast Eagles, put them onto the podcast, get them onto it. It's great content. And thank you very much. We appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye for now.